Good evening and welcome to the Wednesday, December 8th. Sorry. Try that again. Good evening and welcome to the Wednesday, December 8th, 2021 Chatham Airport Commission meeting. This meeting will be by remote participation only with a simulcast on channel 18. Pursuant to Governor Baker's June 16th, 2021 signing of an act relative to extending certain COVID-19 measures adopted during the state of emergency, including the extension of his March 12, 2020 order, suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law, GL, section 30A, subsection 20 until April 1st, 2022. This meeting of the Chatham Airport Commission is being conducted via remote participation only. Every effort will be made to ensure that the public can adequately access the proceedings as provided for in the order. A reminder that persons who would like to listen to this meeting while in progress may do so by calling the phone number 508-945-4410 with the conference ID 761-749-450, followed by the hashtag. Or you can join the meeting online via Microsoft Teams through the link posted on the agenda. While this is a live broadcast and simulcast on channel 18, despite our best efforts, we may not be able to provide for real-time access. We will post a record of this meeting on the town's website as soon as possible. All right. I think we've got everyone here who's here. We'll find out. Time for roll call. Commissioner Burke.
Present.
Thank you. Ted, turn your volume up just a little bit. Thank you.
Okay.
Commissioner Cortese.
Present.
Volume, please, a little bit. Thank you. Commissioner Donovan.
Present.
Thank you. Commissioner Galen.
Present.
And Commissioner Owens.
Present.
And Commissioner Harrison is present. Let me take a quick time out here for a second. Mark, is there something we can do about the feedback? I've got my volume down, and I don't know how I'm coming through. Is there any help you can give us?
I just need the commissioners to turn off their microphones when they're not speaking.
There we go. Sorry. So that should put me on and everyone else silenced, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
Good. Okay.
If
Thank
you're
you.
speaking, you're the only one with the mic open.
All right. Thank you. Okay. The first order of business are the minutes from October 13th. At our regular meeting, there were problems with those as you reviewed them in the package over the weekend. You noticed some yellow highlights. It indicates areas where the CARES Act and the CRRSA Act were confused, and I wanted to have those straightened out so that the notes reflected the appropriate nomenclature. There's one on page 5. There's another one. I guess it's before that on page. Yeah, on page 3. So there are really only 2 that needed to be corrected. We've already voted on these and we voted on them pending the amendments. I don't think we have to re-vote unless there is someone who has an issue with the changes. If not, I'll just take a quick consensus that all is good. Actually, this won't be a formal vote since we've already voted. So I'll just run through real quickly. Commissioner Burke, any problems with it?
Nope, no problems.
Thank you. Commissioner Cortese?
No problems.
Thank you. Commissioner Donovan?
No problems.
Thank you. Commissioner Galen?
No problems.
And Commissioner Owens?
No problem.
Okay, and Commissioner Harrison, no problems. Thank you very much. Moving on to the minutes of the November 10th meeting. Does anyone have any
Chairman?
additions, corrections, or deletions?
Chairman,
Yes,
if I may, just a point of order, I believe you need a roll call for attendance at the meeting.
I did that.
Then excuse me.
Who was asking?
It's Renee Haas. Okay, my error.
The minutes of the November 10th meeting, again, I'll repeat, are there any additions, deletions, or changes that you saw in those minutes? Hearing none, I will ask for a motion to accept the minutes of the November 10th, 2021 meeting.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. That was. Let's see. Commissioner Galen, I think you were the first one, and I think the second was, I think, Mr. Cortese. Commissioner Cortese, was that you? Who seconded it?
Correct.
Yes? Okay. All right. For a vote, Commissioner Burke?
Approved.
Thank you. Commissioner Cortese?
Yes.
Thank you. Commissioner Donovan?
Yes.
Commissioner Galen?
Yes.
Commissioner Owens?
Yes.
And Commissioner Harrison, yes. The minutes are approved. Next item on the agenda are public announcements and agenda item requests. Before I open it up to the public, I have some responses to prior agenda item requests that I'd like to go through. This might, answer some questions if you were going to make a request again of something that someone might have requested in the past. And I'll just go through this real quickly. The open and ongoing items, those 4 items are still to be determined. They have to do with minimum standards. Additional master plan, additional hangars and revenue discussion, master plan update, discussion. That may change, I don't know. And then some other topics that I think we're going to, after the first of the year, if we can make some arrangements to have some special forums for the public on some of these topics that are listed here, such as what is decision altitude, what is the safety history of Chatham Airport, what are preferred alternative approach details, and how reduced visibility minimums increase public safety, all other details of preferred alternative noise and runway protection zones, etc. In fact, tonight we're going to be talking about runway protection zones because I know it's becoming a hot topic. For future agenda requests from citizens, Mr. Haas has asked us to communicate technical information to the public using subject matter experts. We have taken that under advisements, and that was what I was alluding to in my previous comment about having forums after the first of the year. Mr. Quinn asked something similar on circling approaches, and Mr. Haas asked about general communications with the community. And these are topics that will be addressed. Ms. Lofgren, you asked some questions earlier on the 10th of November. I can give you some answers now. The runway protection zone and design aircraft presentation will be discussed tonight. RPZ signage. There is, you need to talk to MassDOT about that. Their highway division, we have no control over what MassDOT puts on their roads. The design aircraft discussion will be combined with the RPZ discussion later this evening. With regard to the airport's carbon emission policy, I thank you for that. The commission will look into it, developing a policy and procedures in 2022. We will also wait for direction from the Town Energy and Climate Committee. With regard to the SWIP questions, the SWPPP, stormwater pollution prevention and planning system that we have, the SWIP questions generally have been answered in the November meeting, but we will be addressing some of your questions with the specifics that you requested in the manager's report. Ms. Bliss, if you're out there, you wanted us to move to hybrid meetings. Given the situation with the Omicron variant and the COVID-19, I am not going to move to a hybrid until I feel it is safe to have people in public together. So right now, my plan is to, unless the town changes their ruling or the state changes their rulings, the April 1st, 2022 date is when we will remain remote until that time. Let's see, Ms. Freeman, you asked about a mission statement discussion. We will do that in 2022, hopefully early in 2022, but thank you for that. Now, for any new agenda item requests from the public, please raise your hand. If there are none, we'll move on. Okay, Mr. Buckley, I see your hand up.
Yes, I had made an agenda item request.
Please raise your volume just a touch.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes, that's better.
Okay. I made an agenda item request last year sometime, I believe, to discuss how agenda item requests are decided upon. And apparently there's a list. I don't know if my request on the list, but it would be the Board of Selectmen have an ongoing list that they include in their packet every week about agenda item requests and the status of those things. So it would be interesting to see the list that you're looking at, Mr. Chair, just so people can get an idea of the status and where it is, and maybe even remember what they even asked for in the first place. So I'd appreciate that.
So we can post that.
Thank you.
I work with our staff liaison on that, and we can get that posted. We spent some time updating it because some of the items had been answered and timed out. So we've been updating that, but we will look into that.
Thank you.
Thank you. And Ms. Lofgren.
Good evening, Huntley. Thank you so much for your answers to my previous requests, and especially for tonight's presentation on RPZ and design aircraft. I have one comment and one statement of interest per your policy. My comment is I would be happy to offer my assistance in sending along suggestions for the mission statement as mentioned at the end of the last meeting. Just give me a heads up for a time frame for when you'll be putting it on the agenda, and I will be able to search my files for relevant information. And my statement of interest, Habitat for Humanity has opened applications for the homes on George Ryder South with a closing date of February 1st, 2022. Given the commission's point of view expressed at previous meetings that homeowners should have done their due diligence in finding out about airport operations before they purchase real estate under the airport approach, and in the interest of full disclosure, I am interested in what steps the commission has taken to inform both Habitat and their prospective applicants on a few things. One is that part of these properties appear to be in the present RPZ, and there are inherent dangers being discussed right now in that location. Two, that they know not just that there is an airport nearby, but there's the presence and frequency of the Pilatus and the other turboprops, and that they've either been able to see the video of the Pilatus coming in over a neighbor of the Habitat property, or have been able to experience this firsthand. It's very quiet right now around the airport and in town, so people who may not be from Chatham may not have understand about this particular aircraft. To inform the Habitat that the airport is seeking to allow landings in inclement weather. And lastly, that the applicants are informed about the possible health issues, especially to children, due to exposure to leaded avgas fuel, Jet A fuel, and the extraordinary noise of the Pilatus and the biplane. I feel it important that these applicants have this information so they can make an informed decision on whether to apply for these Habitat homes. Thank you.
Okay. Let me just write some notes.
Would you like me to send along my remarks in an email?
Yeah, please.
Okay, will do.
Okay. Seeing no others, we will move on to comments on new business items. Mr. Haas?
Yeah, thank you, Chairman Harrison. I just wanted to, note that on June 24th, an ad was placed by a group that calls itself Community Speaks, and it purported to tell just the facts. That was the headline of the ad, and it was about the Airport Commission proposals, but actually corrected or contained many incorrect statements and embedded misconceptions. And I know that you had, made that comment even to the press. I just want to note that this document package for this month's commission meeting contains an extensive rebuttal, which highlights the many incorrect statements that were contained in that ad. I just, want to urge members of the public who aren't very familiar, with all the details, to read the document that's in the commission package. And I do understand from reading the document itself that it will be posted on the Airport Commission website under, the Airport Master Plan Update responses. Among other things, this document does show that the Airport Commission plans for new approaches will not significantly increase traffic at CQX, unlike has been sort of speculatively claimed. I just want to thank the Commission for putting that document together, and hopefully that will be made available and publicized so that people can read it. Thank you, Chairman.
You're very welcome. Yes, we will. If it hasn't gone up on the website yet, it will be up there soon. Ms. Freeman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It's Gloria Freeman, and I look forward to your discussion of the mission statement early in 2022. Thank you.
You're welcome.
I would like to speak to new business item F, Airport Commission engagement of legal counsel. I'm referencing Attorney Mackey's letter addressed to you in the meeting agenda packet, indicating that his firm, Anderson Krieger LLP, and I quote, would be pleased to represent the Chatham Airport Commission in matters related to the Charter Review Project, and to provide general advice from time to time on airport and aviation related issues, end quote. When I brought this up at yesterday's Charter Review Committee meeting, you said that you didn't know anything about outside counsel being hired to help the Airport Commission in matters related to the Charter Review Project. You indicated that the firm was being hired to help with navigation easement issues. I just want to be sure that our town officials and town council understand the legal services you want provided, since the Charter Review Project is the one specific issue that Attorney Mackey mentioned. Certainly, there is no problem with your hiring outside legal counsel if our town officials have approved it and the funding. I just want to be sure that this has all been appropriately approved. Thank you.
You're welcome. Just a moment. I'll be speaking to that later on, Ms. Freeman. Let's see, Ms. Gibbs, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. You had mentioned that there's going to be a significant discussion about the RPCs, which are a hot topic coming up. And I would ask that we be able to participate in that if we have questions, only because I don't know what you're going to say. So there's no way for me to make a statement ahead of time. So
you might want to make it now, because that'll be a discussion only time.
Yeah, but we don't know what you're going to say.
You'll have to take some good notes and bring it up at the next meeting.
Well, the planning board is meeting next week on the West Chatham corridor, and they're going to be talking about, I assume, the airport, because it's a public hearing.
And as far as I know, we're not involved in that meeting next time, from what I understand.
All right, well, here, then I'll say it now, even though I'm not prepared, because I wanted to hear what you had to say. The existing RPZ does not allow, because we've taken money from grant assurances, to have any development within it.
No, that's not correct.
Actually, it is correct. You can't have any.
Whoa. I'm not going to argue with you. You have to go with what I'm saying. Oh, that's not totally correct.
But you're not going to tell me what it is, so I can't comment on it.
You'll hear about it this evening. You'll hear about it this evening. And then we part of our discussion.
Okay, see, this is where I'm trying to be collaborative here, and I can't believe you just said that. You said it's a hot topic, but you're not going to let us talk about it. We're going to get to hear what you say, and then we have to wait 2 weeks for your other meeting. In the interim, the planning board is going to try and jam through a bylaw revision that's going to allow development within the RPZ. Okay, I just want to go on record with that. Secondly, I have other topics here. So I have 3 other items that I want to address. One is the Anderson Krieger. I would like you to respond to it when this gets up for discussion, that you are hiring them, and according to this, for the Charter Review Project, which means I believe you're hiring them because you do not want the select board to take over the Airport Commission duties. I'd like to know where that money's coming from, that you're going to be paying Anderson Krieger. Is that money that has been received from rentals? Is it the revolving fund? Is that taxpayer money? because I got a serious problem if you're hiring counsel and we're paying for it so that you can use it to make sure the people who are most concerned and the most in jeopardy will lose this opportunity to get a more collaborative commission. So that's number one. I want to know how they're getting paid and who approved it. And then on the Gale Associates monthly report, if they would address, it says preliminary discussion regarding obstruction mitigation. It says prepare a preliminary scope of work to assist the commission in reaching out to property owners where tree obstructions have been identified, assist the commission chair in drafting a letter to be sent out to the property owners where trees are obstructing it, and expect to set up meetings and meet with individual property owners. Now, I started coming to your meetings in August of 2019, and you were talking about navigation easements there and had identified 18 to 45 properties that were going to be involved. I would like to know if you're telling me that they've never, in these last 2 years, they have never been contacted by Gale Associates, although they were identified 2 years ago, and that you are only now reaching out to them, because that is like pretty much mind-boggling to me that you have been talking about their properties and never even contacted them. And that's one of the problems. There is a lack of communication here with the public, who are the people most adversely affected by the decisions you make. And the third is on the Fisherman storage units. Last month, you surprised me by saying that you had only recently found out that of the 8 or 9 people storing stuff there, that a number of them lived in Harwich. I was pretty shocked that nobody knew that or thought it was weird that we had people from Harwich storing stuff at our airport. So before the town goes down the road any further, because they're talking a lot of money, you know, roadways, gates, personnel, and all that kind of stuff, I would like to know, when you're discussing that, how many people currently of the 8 are actually Chatham residents? What are we talking about? What's the universe? Is it 2, 3, 4, 5, 8? Because before we go and spend hundreds of thousands of dollars for 2 people, I think you guys have to tell the town what the universe is on those people, because it doesn't make any sense to go through this entire thing if we have been providing a dumping ground for Harwich residents. Thank you.
You're welcome. Mr. Buckley.
Yes, I have a question based on your interaction with the previous speaker. I'm a little confused about the public comment policy. I'm looking at it right now, and it says that the chairman reserves the right to cease accepting public comment if such comment becomes repetitive in nature. And that, let's see, something about 5 minutes, but at the discretion of the chairperson. Is it the chair's opinion that the chair can interrupt a speaker and correct them in the middle of their 5 minutes?
Was that a question?
Yes, it is. Point of order question, point of information, I guess. Please clarify that point.
I might have overstepped there, but I didn't want it to go further.
Okay, because the policy is set up so that people have to guess what's going to be said in advance. And if that's the case, then they should get their 5 minutes, or of course, if they're off topic. But as long as they're civil and on topic, there should be no's. The chair was out of order with the policy adopted by the committee. And this has happened many times in the past, I'd like to note. So please take care to follow the policy. We'll follow the policy if the chair will. Everybody should. That's what I point out. Yes, that's about it. It's hard for people to comment on anticipating what might be said ahead of time. So actually the policy is just not meaningful in any way, and is, I believe, set up to prevent public dialogue and deliberation, not to enhance it.
Well, I've been told I've been told to follow the procedures of the Board of Selectmen or Select Board, and that's what we've done.
Oh, okay. Point of information. Who told you to do that?
The chairman of the Select Board.
Oh, okay. And is that I was under the impression that the Select Board could not direct the Airport Commission to take actions, that they only nominated people.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but it was a suggestion. Sorry, Chairman, I just had to jump in.
That's fine.
Okay,
Yes,
so
it
And
was a
we're following
suggestion. I
the
thought it was a good one. So
Okay.
we went along with it.
okay, yeah, fine. Then you don't have to have meaningless dialogue. You can make it more meaningful by, you don't have to follow what the Board of Selectmen does. They're not. That format is the same way. It's just as meaningless when people have to anticipate or guess what's going to be discussed ahead of time. That's it. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. I've got a CG here. I don't know who that is. I've got a CG here. I don't know who that is.
It's Carol Gordon.
I don't know who that is. Oh, Carol Gordon. Okay, we've got some people with their mics open. If you could turn them off, please. Okay, we've got some people.
Can you hear me?
I can now. I got one more person. I got a person with telephone number ending in 5116. Please turn your mic off.
Oh.
Thank you.
Are we good?
You're good.
Thank you. Okay, I have a question about the agenda item about RPZ, the design aircraft, please, and maybe you can help me understand the juxtaposition of the RPZ and design aircraft, because the FAA advisory shows that the size of these large Pilatus turboprops do not affect the size of the RPZ. I believe currently only landings under so-called visual flight rules are allowed with visibility greater than a mile. However, I think you had said time and time again that you want to allow poor visibility landings, for example, with visibility lesser than a mile. The latest FAA advisory requires that for visibility minimums less than 1 mile, the area of the RPZs would need to be increased, meaning acres, which would include dozens more people in the RPZs. There are already, as far as I know, 19 homes at risk and ignored in the present RPZ. So my question is, how can you base your airport proposals on poor visibility landings that would put more homes at risk? How can you go about doing that?
I can say that in our presentation from Mr. Karen this evening, our engineer, that question will be answered.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I look
You're
forward to
welcome.
that. Thank you.
Let's see, Commissioner Cortese.
Yes, thank you, Chairman Harrison. I just wanted to make a comment on a question that was raised, and it's to verify for myself. I believe we did not contact the obstructions because they hadn't been verified yet. Is that correct? That might be a question for Mr. Karen.
Yeah, and I think Mr. Karen will be, when we get into that later on, we'll be talking about that. It's only recently that we have finally have a very good picture of the specific properties. And we didn't want to go out and contact 45 people if they weren't going to be involved. There's no sense in doing that, and we don't have the time to do it, nor the funding to do it. So, it's probably going to be significantly less, and we will be addressing that later in the meeting.
So we weren't withholding. It was just a matter of we wanted to verify and confirm before we approached the prospective properties.
That is correct. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Yep. Let's see, CEB, I think that's Ms. Bliss, is that correct?
Yes, it is. Thank you, Carol Bliss. Chair, I was noticing that you had said that you're following the protocol of the select board. And the select board has been hybrid for many months and just took a hiatus, I think, during the holidays. So it seems disingenuous to say you're going to wait until April when you don't know what the select board is going to do if you're in fact following the policies of the select board.
No,
That's
I'm not following their complete policies. I'm just following
You're just
what I
picking and
mentioned
choosing.
earlier.
It sounds like you're picking and choosing what seems to be unable for us to be able to contribute in the discussion, as previous speakers had said, especially about the RPZ. Thank you.
You're welcome. Ms. Gibbs.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. I don't think I took my 5 minutes, so I would like to ask that you discuss during the RPC discussion the plane crash off of Nauset, where the individual did not have instrument flight rating, and he crashed in the dark, and he was trying to get back to the airport. Had he made it further, how are you going to prevent those kinds of accidents when people are coming in here who haven't flown in before, who may not know how to turn on the runway lights, who weren't on the right channel to get direction, and he could have crashed within the RPZ trying to land at the airport. Those are the kinds of risks that we face every day when we have pilots coming in who are not familiar with Chatham and with your proposals. So I would like you to talk about how lucky we were that he didn't get closer to Chatham and crash on land trying to approach the aircraft. He should not have at the airport. He should not have been flying in the dark. He didn't even take off from Reading, Pennsylvania until sunset. And those are the kinds of things we face, and that's why we're concerned. So I would like you to address that as well. Thank you.
All right. Mr. Haas.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just very quickly, and I know that this will be addressed, by Matt Karen later, but just to make it proximate to the comment made by Ms. Gordon, and my understanding, also having been a former commissioner, but my understanding of all the documents and the reading is that there is no application for landings at Chatham Airport with visibilities under 1 mile, which is actually the same visibility minimum that exists today with the circling approaches. So it's just an example of an embedded misconception in a comment. So I just wanted to clarify that, and I'm sure Matt will amplify that later on. Thank you, Chairman.
You're welcome. All right. I don't see any other hands, so we'll move on with the rest of the meeting. Let's see. Commissioner reports. Commissioner Burke, any comments on the revolving fund?
No, just for the period of November 5th through the 3rd of December. Received rental receipts of $3,168, bringing year to date to $17,625. We paid personal services for $214, bringing year to date to $638. Purchase of services in the amount of $7,821, bringing year to date to $29,944. And we received as hangar leases $2,100, bringing that year-to-date total to $17,268. And that's
okay.
it.
I'm sorry, was that it? Commissioner Burke?
Yes, yes, that was it.
You're good?
Okay.
It. I just want to make a comment for those of you looking at the package, if you have it in front of you. Those numbers on the graphs are cumulative. Just so you know, it's not, if you look at them, it's not like in November, 25,000 was spent, and then in December, up to now in December, that close to 30,000 was spent. Those are cumulative numbers. And you can see approximately 23,000 up to 30,000 is the 7,000 that Commissioner Burke mentioned. So you have to look at those graphs that way. The revenue starts to come in from a variety of sources. One question that did come up from the public was, who is the payroll vendor? What is that? Does the Airport Commission have payroll? And the answer to that is no. We do not have payroll. That is a town nomenclature, just indicating that that is what we pay to have the minutes of the meetings transcribed. So that's what the payroll vendor is. Thank you, Commissioner Burke. Commissioner Cortese, do you have anything for the good of the order?
I just wanted to highlight the med flight that happened in November. I believe it was middle of November. And that's the importance of what we're trying to do at the airport to allow the safe approaches for aircraft. And I had a question, actually, if I could, and go a second off topic of the commissioner report. Would that be okay?
Of the which report?
Yeah, just to go off topic of the commissioner report for a second.
Yeah, I guess. Yeah. Go ahead.
This is kind of just popped in my head. I believe it was Ms. Lofgren was asking the question of notifying prospective homeowners in town of the airport. And I have a question, and maybe this is for all of us, if the harbor master or any of the harbors or any of the waterways have to notify prospective homeowners or property buyers or renters, if that fishing boats may be leaving at 2, 3, 1, 4, 5 in the morning, and then also the highway department, they have to be notify if trucks go by. Does the public works have to notify where the transfer facility is? The pumping stations have to notify that there might be a potential flood. So these are the questions I have. Is that something that the other departments do? Does anybody know the answer?
I certainly don't.
All right,
I don't know.
I'll look into it.
When people move into town, nobody notifies us that they're moving into town. I had no idea that the closing for the habitat was and I think she said February 1st. So, it's really, as I see it, if they come to us, I'll be more than happy to tell them all about the airport and the relationship of their property to the airport. But I had no idea. And
likewise,
if we don't know, we can't reach out. So if they know, and if Mr. Lockman, I know you're listening, I see your hand up. If you know these people and you want them to get in touch with us, by all means, have them get in touch with us. I'd be more than happy to deal with it.
I feel the same way because when I moved into town permanently, I've been in town since I've been 3 through my parents, but when I moved down here year round in 2016, I wasn't verified. I did my research as I've bought other properties in the past of what's in the neighboring area. So I just wanted to see if that was something that was happening elsewhere that we should emulate. But I would be happy to discuss the airport as well. So that might be something we can do.
I have no problem with that. Okay, thank you. Let's see, Ms. Gibbs, your hand's up again. Yes.
It's Paula. May I just make a clarification to Mr. Cortese? If I know this is at a different time, but I'm not sure or should I respond at the end of the meeting?
No, go ahead right now.
Go ahead.
As a homeowner, I did my due diligence, and Mr. Cortese, I don't expect that the airport will reach out to everybody, but Habitat entered into a contract with the town for these properties, and it's a special arrangement, and it is a special oh my gosh, proposal, whatever, and endeavor that involves the town too. So I was just concerned that they were notified, saying is it such a there's such controversy right now as a matter not of not policy but expectation, but as a matter of courtesy within another town initiative. That was mine, not to go around and
Okay, well,
thank you. So that was
I would
the question.
I would think a Google map search of the area, and then also that would be part of the town's responsibility.
Mr. Cortese, would you up the volume on your mic a little bit? I'm having a hard time hearing you.
Oh,
Thanks.
sorry. I don't know if I can. Is that better?
Yeah, it's a little better, or maybe get closer to it when you're speaking.
I might have to get closer. So sorry if you see that I haven't shaved since last night.
All right. We have a hand from Mr. Whalen. Go ahead.
Yeah, just very, Terry Whalen, just very quickly. So there was coordination and there was some outreach. How that, manifests itself in the final documents, we'd have to get that information. But Matt, quite frankly, had been involved also with in communication and consulted with by the Community Development Department.
Oh, okay. I did not know that.
Thank you, Terry.
Ms. Gibbs, I'm sorry, I might have lowered your hand by accident there.
Thank you. Two things. One, as Terry Whalen just confirmed, before we actually signed an agreement on the Habitat homes, this was brought up. And part of the problem we have had over the years is that the commissions don't talk to each other, and it seems to be up to the public to have to notify the Airport Commission that there are homes within the runway protection zone and tell you that you've got to notify the planning board. Everybody pleads ignorance. Secondly, I'm a little confused about what public comment is. This is our time to talk about the issues we have on agenda items coming up, rather than getting into a debate with commissioners during our public comment, kind of, debating whether or not our comments are legitimate. They should rightly take place during the conversation of the agenda item, and then apparently we can comment at the end. So to get in this tit for tat here, when this is our time to let you know what our concerns are, and then have it discussed under the agenda item, so that when people go to the minutes, they see that conversation in that part of the agenda, not in, the first 3 pages of what everyone said here. So I'm totally unclear as to what public comment is. We're asking you to discuss these issues that we're bringing to you within the agenda items, because we're not allowed to speak that, not to get into a debate over various issues at this point, because we're normally not allowed to go back and forth like this. So I think you need some clarity on what the public policy comment period is about. Thank you.
You're welcome. Commissioner Cortese, followed by Commissioner Galen.
Yeah, just wanted to say this is not a public comment section here, and this is we're still on commissioner reports. So I think I'd like to get us back on track, but I do believe this is also a business meeting that we handle, and this is for internal discussion. So I just wanted to make sure that that is kind of, I think that's the message you're trying to get through, so that we can have a productive meeting. I appreciate it.
Mr. Galen, Commissioner Galen?
Mr. Cortese addressed it.
All right. Let's see, next commissioner. Commissioner Donovan, you have anything?
Nothing for me, thank you.
Okay. Commissioner Galen. Nope, unmute.
Not till later in the meeting, till we're item G.
Commissioner Owens.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have a couple of things to bring up tonight on the Fisherman storage area. I just wanted to make it a little clearer, even though we discussed it at the last 2 meetings, I think. The Fisherman storage area was created to give the fishermen a place to store their equipment during the off seasons. And the Airport Commission voted to lease the area, which was sectioned off into plots. And the responsibility to oversee the area, lease space, collect rents, and maintain organization and cleanliness was given to the harbor master. As a result of the environmental assessment of the, as a result of the environmental assessment, the Airport Commission was told by the FAA that the area had to be closed for the use of fishing gear storage. So it was never set up to have the Airport Commission oversee the area. And I believe it was already discussed, the reason that there were residents of other than Chatham using the area is they had boats and used the harbors in town, which meant they were paying some kind of fees for moorings and fuel and different things like that. But that was not up to us. We just allowed the use of the land, and that's that. So later in this meeting, there's going to be an update on the progress they're trying to determine a new location for the fishermen to store their equipment. And what else? I just wanted to remind the town manager and the select board that the removal and remedy to keep the osprey from nesting on the police communications tower needs to be addressed, hopefully before the ospreys arrive back in Chatham in the spring. That's all I have for you tonight. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. Just one comment from me on that. I know I've heard from witnesses at the airport that they have seen the osprey fly low over the airport from the police tower, communications tower, over to I think it's White Pond, or maybe it's Goose Pond. I'm not quite sure. It's one of the two. Anyway, it doesn't matter. They're still flying low over the airport, and that could cause a problem for airplanes taking off or landing. So it's something that needs to be addressed. I know I've talked with our staff liaison, Mr. Whalen, about it. It's a very, very difficult thing to do, apparently. More difficult than I thought when we talked about it. These birds, they find a place, and that is their home for life, almost, pretty much, unless there are, drastic, draconian methods taken to remove them, in which I certainly don't want to promote that. But we do have to do something about it. So thank you, Commissioner Owens, for your report. I have nothing for this evening to say that I won't speak to, possibly maybe later on. But let me see if I have anything here. No, I don't think so. No. All right. So moving on. Thank you, commissioners, for those reports. Mr. Howard, Airport Manager's report.
Yes, good evening. So Airport Manager's report for today, not too lengthy, as you can see. We got our guard report as usual attached. And just a report that our Chatham Airport staff, along with the Friends of Chatham Airport, raised $4,750 for Monomoy Community Services and their Chatham Giving Fund. That was completed right at the end of November. And there really isn't much else on the manager's report, except for one item in response to some public questions at the last meeting regarding the SWIP document and questions about the record keeping. I forwarded some records to Mr. Whalen. If he could put those up, that would be great. Okay, so the first document there, the question from the public came is, do we have a training document? Is it recorded? Do we have the checklists? This is our training outline for all the Chatham Airport staff. It's a one-page document, just outlines the different sections to read and review, and they do a lot of this with myself in this process. We log all that training. We keep that in the SWIP book here at the airport. Also on the next page there, if you could page one over. That's one of our checklists that we use for the inspections that are required in the SWIP and the SPCC, which is the Spill Prevention Control Plan. And then if you page one more time, that is a sample of the page that we fill out every time we do a water sample taking at one of the water runoff drainage sites as designated in the SWIP. We fill one of those out for each sample taken, which is done quarterly. So just to put it out there that these documents do exist, the checklists are being performed. Also want to note that recently we did a bunch of maintenance and repair work done to our fuel facility containment systems. We had some issues with one of the valves and some of the indicating systems on it. So that has been recently repaired and is back in full working order and complies with our SWIP and SPCC plans. That concludes what I had for tonight's meeting, unless there's questions from the commissioners.
Oh, I will, let me just ask Ms. Lofgren if she has any comments on that, because she was the one who requested that. Okay, I guess not. Okay. I think that pretty much concludes the manager's report. Nothing else? Tim? You're muted. You good?
Yep, I'm good. Thank you.
Okay.
And Tim, I'm sorry, I
Oh,
was
here she is. Here she is.
I was distracted for a moment. These docs are very nice. Thank you for providing that. They're not in the package. Where could you repeat where one can see them? Or
You would have to submit a written request to the commission, and then we can get them.
Okay, so that's something that's held in your office then. Thank you very much for answering that question. I appreciate it.
Okay.
Do I have a motion to accept the airport manager's report?
So moved.
Whoa,
Whoa.
complete with echo.
Second.
All right, I think, oh, hi, David. Finally came alive there. Okay. I have no idea who.
So moved.
Okay.
Second,
And who was that?
Owens and Cortez.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. I got it. Thank you. Manager's report. Okay.
Roll call.
Yep, I'm about to do it.
Oh.
Those in favor of accepting the manager's report, so state. Commissioner Burke,
Yes.
Commissioner Cortese,
Yes.
Commissioner Donovan,
Yes.
Commissioner Galen,
Yes.
Commissioner Owens,
Yes.
and Commissioner Harrison, yes. All right. The next item is the engineer's report from Mr. Karen. I just have a procedural question for Mr. Whalen, though, before we get into this. Do we want to do the placeholder item now?
If I can, Mr. Chair, I just put that in after. I thought it'd be helpful if the commission heard Matt's presentation on just, you know, where the status of the capital project, and then maybe take a vote on the placeholder article, just for context.
Okay.
Even though it is just a placeholder
okay,
article.
before we get into the RPZ and planning board information.
Yeah, that would be my suggestion. Yeah.
Okay, that's fine. I agree. Thank you. Mr. Karen, engineer's report. Item one only for now.
Hey, Huntley, can you hear me okay?
I can.
Okay, good evening. Good evening, members of the Airport Commission. Matt Karen with Gale Associates for the record. So in my update for this month, you'll see that there's the preliminary discussion regarding obstruction mitigation. Huntley, I've been working with you. I had sent over the preliminary scope of work, which includes outreach efforts to property owners where we've identified trees on their property. I assisted you in drafting a letter, which I believe is going to be sent out after the new year, if I have that correct.
Yes.
And we're expecting to set up individual meetings with those property owners to discuss options that may be available to them and to the town for purposes of removing the trees. And so I believe probably at next month's meeting, I will have a final scope of work to send before the commission for review, comment, and hopefully approval. And that is where we stand right now with that particular project.
Okay, thank you. So commissioners, given that information and given that the cost of the project, which will ultimately be reimbursed by the FAA, is I think it's 1.95 million in the most recent CIP. Matt, is that correct? I think 1.95 million total cost.
Yeah, that's approximately it. If you want to give me a minute, I can probably pull it up real quickly.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, it's 1.95.
And the state share of that is
97,500.
And the town share?
97,500.
Okay, but if I'm not mistaken, given this particular project, we have to set aside the total amount for the warrant as a placeholder. It will probably come in much lower than that, but we need to set a placeholder on the town warrant for that amount. Am I correct there?
Yes, that is my understanding, and Terry probably can chime in and speak more towards that, but that is my understanding, Huntley.
Right, and Terry, could you chime in on that a little bit, please?
Yeah, and if I can, just for a little more context. So yeah, Matt, so again, this is where the capital project would plug into the town fiscal planning process. So just for context, the budgeting planning or process deadlines are fast closing with fiscal warrant articles needing to be submitted by December 17th. So we need to get that in. And again, we've had preliminary discussions with the town manager and finance director as well on this approach. So this is what's been suggested, to hold the placeholder, and again, with the values to be determined as we move along through the process. And again, language in the article and the motion indicating that the basically through the tax rate be fully reimbursed by the FAA upon completion of the project. So that's just, again, a little different than some of the other capital requests that the commission has submitted in the past. But again, the nature of the placeholder article and where the commission is in the process right now, this is just primarily to again literally place that as a placeholder to meet the deadline, with more information to come in the coming months to finalize that value.
Okay. So commissioners, I think what we need to do is have a vote to approve a placeholder funding article for the fiscal year 2023 capital improvement project for obstruction removal, and send that on to the select board. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
All right.
Second.
Who said it, who made the motion first? I know, David, you were seconded it. Was that
Yeah.
Ted?
Mike
Yeah.
Cortese.
It was
Oh,
Ted.
Mike? Okay.
Or
Listen,
Ted,
I'm
Mike,
getting
one
an
of those
echo
guys.
tonight, so it's hard for me to tell. So this is a placeholder to, I don't know if I can say encumber the funds, but just to let the select board know that the maximum amount for the warrant would be $1.95 million, ultimately to be reimbursed by the FAA, except for the town share. So I've got a motion on the floor. I've got it seconded. I'll take a roll call vote. Commissioner Burke,
Yes.
Commissioner Cortese,
Yes.
Commissioner Donovan,
Yes.
Commissioner Galen,
Yes.
Commissioner Owens,
Yes.
Commissioner Harrison, yes. All right. And I will say, for the public's sake, that number, we're going to work very hard to bring it down as far as we can. Okay. Moving on to general items. I've been going back and forth with people over the RPZ, lots of emails, lots of information going out there, some of which is correct, some of which isn't very correct. And I thought it would be a good idea to get some of those questions resolved. I may, depending on time, I may open for questions later from the public, but I'm not sure. We'll see how things go. So Mr. Karen, RPZ, please.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I just want to state before we get into this, because I know it was brought up, the aircraft crash that took place back in October. To my knowledge, the full NTSB report has not been published on that, or at least I'm not privy to it if it has been, and I'm not sure if anyone else on the commission is. But I think it would be wildly inappropriate for me to speculate on what may or may not have occurred with that plane crash and how that would affect Chatham and the safety of the approaches in Chatham moving forward. So respectfully, I'm going to decline responding to that at this point in time until the full investigation on that has been published, if that's okay with you.
It is fine with me. I think that's appropriate.
Thank you. And
Can I make a, sorry.
Good.
Commissioner Cortese.
Can I make a comment on that? Yeah, I 100% agree with Mr. Karen from an aviation side. And I just wanted to make the comment that has not been fully published yet. And we need to have that information, similar to having all the correct properties before we approach the property owners. So thank you so much for saying that.
Okay.
Great, thank you. And if Terry could pull up the package so I can walk folks through that, or if I can get control of something. Okay, great. Thank you so much for that, Terry. So yes, Mr. Chairman, members of the commission, so there has been some confusion and misinformation disseminated around town regarding the size of Chatham's runway protection zones. And I am going to attempt to clarify that this evening. So before I get into the size of Chatham's RPZs, I think it's important to understand what factors dictate the size of the RPZ. And there are two critical factors. One of them is the design aircraft, and I'll get into that in a minute, and also the visibility minimums themselves. So as you can see on the screen here, the design aircraft, and this is an excerpt from Advisory Circular 150-5300-13A. And that is the design AC for the FAA. These are the standards that when we're advising the Airport Commission and designing projects at the airport, this is the AC that we follow. And so I'll just read this real quickly. The design aircraft is an aircraft with characteristics that determine the application of airport design standards for a specific runway, taxiway, taxi lane, apron, or other facilities such as engineered material arresting systems, which the airport does not have. The aircraft can be a specific aircraft model or a composite of several aircraft using, expected, or intended to use the airport or part of the airport, also called the critical aircraft or critical design aircraft. Next slide, please, or next page, please. So this excerpt here is from the existing master plan, the most recently completed master plan. I've highlighted the section where we included a definition of the design aircraft under the design aircraft section, which is the most demanding aircraft type or group of aircraft with similar characteristics making regular use of the airport. So when we went through the master plan process, working with the FAA, working with Mass DOT, the Airport Commission, airport management, it was identified that the Beach Baron, which was previously used in the previous master plan, still remains the design aircraft and other aircraft, as you can see on the bottom section that's highlighted. And aircraft with similar characteristics remains the most demanding aircraft utilizing CQX. So although we're calling out the Beach Baron B-58, there are other B-1 small type aircraft, such as the Cessna 172s and the Cessna 178s, that are also B-1 small. So it's those are the family of aircraft, or the suite of aircraft, if you will, that make up the design aircraft at the airport. It's important to note that this section here, section 4.9.1, in this chapter, which is chapter 4 of the forecast, was reviewed, it was vetted, and it was ultimately approved by the FAA in order for the Airport Commission to move forward with the master plan. So the design aircraft at Chatham is the Beach Baron or other similar type aircraft that fall within the B-1 small aircraft category, and not the Pilatus PC-12 that I've seen disseminated around town in other documents. And I just want to make another point on this. Just because the airport's critical aircraft is a B-1 small aircraft, that does not mean that larger, more demanding aircraft are unable to utilize Chatham, and nor does it mean that Chatham Airport is incapable of handling those larger aircraft. Next slide, please. Okay, so visibility minimums. What I would like to highlight on this section here is this gets into approach procedures with vertical guidance, and this is applicable in this particular circumstance because the airport is seeking to get an LPV approach. And an LPV approach has vertical guidance and components to it that it falls under this category, and I'll just read this real quickly. Approach procedures with vertical guidance. These are runways classified as APV, are designed to handle instrument approach operations where the navigation system provides vertical guidance down to 250, that's height above threshold, and visibility minimums to as low as 3/4 statute mile. May apply to the following approach types: instrument landing system, ILS, LNAV, vertical navigation, localizer performance with vertical guidance, there's your LPV, or area navigation, RNAVs, required navigation performance. And the point that I'm making in this thing here is that it can get visibility minimums down to as low as 3/4 statute mile, but that doesn't automatically mean that the visibility minimums at Chatham are going to be as low as 3/4 statute mile. Our preliminary discussions with FAA flight procedures indicates that Chatham's visibility minimums will remain at quote unquote not lower than 1 mile, which I'll get into in a few minutes. So again, just because they can get you down to as low as 3/4 mile doesn't mean that that's what Chatham is going to be able to get with an LPV approach. And again, preliminary discussions with flight procedures indicates that that is not capable of happening at the airport. The other point that I want to make, and I'll read the last sentence in this highlighted section, which says, these runways must be at least 3,200 feet in length and a width of 60 feet. Well, we've gone over this before, and in our discussions with FAA flight procedures, they have indicated that there are hundreds of airports across the country with LPV approaches on less than 3,200 feet, and they confirm that this is something that can be achieved at Chatham Airport. It's important to note that Gale Associates, and my recommendation to the commission is, you defer that safety review to FAA flight procedures and let them make the determination as to whether or not an LPV approach is something that can safely be implemented at Chatham on less than 3,200 feet. Next slide, please. Okay, so in a lot of the documents that I've seen floating around, there's been reference made to Advisory Circular 150-5300-13B, which is still in draft format, but in my opinion, this will ultimately supersede FAA AC 150-5300-13A, which is what I was just referencing. And I think it's important to note in this revised AC 13B, if you read the highlighted number 2, the approach procedures with vertical guidance, the language has changed from must have a runway length of 3,200 feet to typically have a length of 3,200 feet, which in my opinion falls right in line with what FAA flight procedures was saying, that LPV approaches are capable of being implemented at airports with runways less than 3,200 feet of runway length. And so that's all I have on that. Next slide, please. Okay, so how do we determine the size of a runway protection zone? So this here is table A7-1, which comes straight from FAA Advisory Circular 150-5300-13A. So keeping in mind that the design aircraft at Chatham Municipal Airport falls under the B1 small aircraft category, which is why I'm using this table. The visibility minimums at Chatham are not lower than 1 mile. And again, preliminary discussions with FAA flight procedures indicates that it will not be able to go lower than 1 mile. This is the table that you would reference to determine the size of your RPZ. If you follow down the column where it says visibility minimums not lower than 1 mile, you'll see there's an approach runway protection zone component to this. And the size of that RPZ is 8.035 acres. Next slide, please. Thank you. So a lot of the information that I've been seeing indicate that Chatham's airport is going to balloon to about 49 acres, their RPZ that is. The only way that that would happen, and a lot of the documents that I've seen, the author is correct if you use the incorrect design aircraft for Chatham, which if you use the Pilatus, which falls under the B2 category, and you use visibility minimums lower than the mile, but not lower than 3/4 of a mile, and you follow that column down, you can see that the runway protection zone would jump to 48.978 acres. So the point that I'm making is the author of a lot of the documents I've seen is not incorrect. He's just applying the wrong design aircraft and is applying visibility minimums that, to my knowledge, don't exist at Chatham Airport. And unless someone else is privy to information that flight procedures is looking to publish, the not lower than 3/4 of a statute mile visibility minimums does not exist for Chatham Airport. Next slide, please. And this is the graphic that I've seen, like I said, disseminated in multiple circulations. The RPZ that is shown in red, that would be your 49 acres. The RPZ that's shown in blue would be the 8 acres, which is applicable to Chatham. Next slide, please. And so just in all fairness, I just wanted to, the next 2 slides here are similar to what FAA AC 150-5300-13A are, except in this case, this is the revised 13B. And I just wanted to show for everybody that these tables from 13A to 13B do not change. So the small aircraft, the not lower than 1 mile, which is applicable to Chatham, the runway protection zone remains at 8.035 acres. And if you go to the next slide, please, and you apply the B2 category or the Pilatus category, and you use the not lower than 3/4 of a mile, the runway protection zone, it remains at that 48.978 acres. So, Mr. Chairman, that hopefully in a nutshell clarifies where we come up with the size of the runway protection zone, the design aircraft at the airport, and I'm happy to answer any questions anyone has on this material or the runway protection zones in general?
You know, I think it would be a good idea since we had some comments earlier. Before we get to those comments, though, I would like if Mr. Whalen would please bring up the letter that we have just received on November 30th from the Planning Board. Thank you. This letter we have received just recently, which directs the Airport Commission with consultant Matt Karen from Gale and Town Council, Mr. Costello, and to come up with the design of a zoning overlay district amendment. This is purely a recommendation. They want us to design it. It's their decision to implement it. But we have to, in good conscience, make this recommendation to the planning board so that what happens in the future in the RPZ zone does not affect the approaches of the aircraft. For example, if things stayed the way they are now, and a developer came in and decided to put maybe one-story cluster housing where job lot is, that would be totally against FAA regulations, and it would be and would not be safe for those houses. God forbid there would be a crash short of the runway. So we have to, like I said, in all good conscience, submit the overlay district and ask them to follow that recommendation, which is made by the FAA. So I just wanted people to see that letter. We will be designing this. We will be turning it in to the planning board. Not, as I understand it, not for this next meeting. We couldn't possibly do that. So I don't think we're on the agenda for the next meeting. I will double check that, but this will not be ready for that meeting under, any circumstances. We just can't do it. So I see some hands up. Ms. Lofgren, go ahead.
Thank you, Huntley, and thank you, Matt, for all of that information. Very helpful. But one question I have still isn't answered. And if you could pull up 4.91, that slide that has the design aircraft. There's still a question that I'm not certain about. I'm not sure if you can show that. It says that regular use is a minimum of 500 annual operations. So my question is, if the number of Pilatus goes over, or Pilatus size, aircraft type 2, aircraft go over 500 annual operations, doesn't that then make it a design aircraft if 500 is the magic number?
Yes, it would. And at that point in time, if and when that threshold is crossed by Pilatus type aircraft or aircraft with similar characteristics, we would most certainly work with the FAA, Mass DOT, and the Airport Commission to better understand what their requirements are and what needs to be done in order to, change the runway environment at the airport to accommodate that type of aircraft.
Thank you. There are people, not myself, I don't go to FlightAware, but have been checking the number, and it seems that even now our CQX is in the high 400s of annual operations of those planes. So we're hitting a threshold already. And then what happens? Do you have to do another master plan? Do you have to do another ALP? How do you accommodate such a big plane in such a small place?
Sure. So let me answer the first part, I'm familiar with FlightAware. I know that there are some numbers that are out there. I know the airport manager tracks Pilatus type aircraft at the airport. I'm aware that someone has gone to the FAA with data that they believe indicates that Pilatus type aircraft trigger the 500 operations threshold, and that has been reviewed and vetted by the FAA. So at this point in time, I have no information. There's been nothing from the FAA or Mass DOT in any correspondence to Gale Associates or to the Airport Commission, to my knowledge, that has been saying that the Pilatus aircraft is the design aircraft at the airport. So that's the first part. The second part is, if the Pilatus PC-12 did become the design aircraft, you wouldn't necessarily need to go through an entire master plan process, but it could be a circumstance where the airport layout plan needs to be updated based on dimensional criteria from the design aircraft. From the design AC that aligns with that design aircraft. So not necessarily a full-blown master plan update, but airport layout plan update, most likely, yes.
Okay, is there, who is in charge of watching those numbers as they climb up? And as we go forward, the master plan is a 20-year document. Who's watching the store on that?
So the airport manager, like I said, I know he tracks that information, and there's information that gets published and released by the FAA on an annual basis, I believe it is. The terminal area forecast and the aerospace forecast. Those are two sources that we used in the development of the forecast for the master plan.
Okay. Well, thank you. Thank you for those answers, Matt.
You're welcome.
Just before we go on, I see that Mr. Howard raised his hand. He might have some information for us on this.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yes, we do track that rather closely with the landing fees and our guard system. We do look at FlightAware as well, but you have to be very cautious with FlightAware and commercially available flight trackers. They are filled with errors for a variety of reasons. As far as the counts, for this year, we are slightly over 400, or that's what we're anticipating for the end of the year, but we are not at the high 400s. That is not true. But we track these numbers, we give them to the commission, and no number is 100% correct. The only way to have 100% correct information is to have a full-time air traffic control tower, which unfortunately we do not have. But we do track we know the customers that come in here routinely. We track them as best we can. Even when we're not here, we use the commercial apps to verify that we're not missing any, and they are all monitored.
Have we ever come close to 500?
To my knowledge, we have not. This year that's coming up, we're anticipating probably, like I said, it's going to be over 400 by a small amount, we think, but the year's not over yet.
And the other thing I think we need to make sure people understand is the difference between operations and flights.
Excellent point. So an operation is a takeoff or a landing. A flight is two of those. So that's the difference. So that's key.
Okay.
Thank
I
you.
see some other hand. Oops, I'm sorry. Are you? Oh, he is all set. Okay. Commissioner Cortese, you had your hand up. Go ahead.
Yes. Is this volume better on your side?
Yeah, a little closer. Yeah. Yep, we're good.
Okay, I just switched to a headset, so just let me know, keep me updated. I had a couple questions for Mr. Karen regarding the great presentation, and I appreciate it. It actually clarified some things for me, so thank you. The one note we have on our runway is we have a 100-foot wide runway, correct?
That is correct.
At Chatham?
Yep.
Okay, and it says minimum of 60. I mean, we're almost double that at that point. That's got to be a determining factor on the approaches as well, I imagine.
Yeah, I would think that
As a
flight
benefit,
procedures would
for
take
the-
that in. Yeah, I would agree with you on that.
Okay, I mean that's a positive. That's something to counteract. And then the 250-foot and under a mile, that depends on obstacle clearance, and I don't believe that that would apply to Chatham, but we're going to let flight procedures work on that, I imagine,
Mhm.
but that, just had a kind of comment on that one. And then as far as the design aircraft goes, that's for planning purposes for the runway, correct?
It is.
Or
Well,
what is the design aircraft for?
so the design so you have like runway taxiway separation. That is
Yeah,
the design aircraft has an effect on, on the runway to taxiway separation, on your runway length could be part of that. Tie down spaces, the size of your tie down spaces, things like that get factored into the design aircraft consideration.
okay, and that doesn't determine the aircraft that can come in, so any aircraft that utilizes it's just the primary aircraft that utilizes the airport, and the design aircraft, so to speak, is what we're
Correct.
designing the airport after.
Yep.
Okay.
That is correct.
Right.
Yeah, aren't we looking at things like length and wingspan for the design elements?
You do, correct. For the design aircraft, absolutely.
Okay.
Okay. But
we have another
at the end of the day, the runway, sorry. I was gonna say, at the end of the day, the runway length dictates the aircraft sizes that can come in, so there'll be no larger aircraft coming.
That is correct. I mean, the airport commission can't prevent any aircraft from coming in. I mean, any pilot in command that is capable of landing at the airport is free to do so. I mean, certainly on a runway less than 3,200 feet, you'd be prohibiting a lot of types of aircraft anyways. But yeah, that the Pilatus PC-12, for example, just because it's not the design aircraft, there's no prohibition or any circumstances that are preventing that from going in there and landing there safely.
Correct. Okay. And so we're not going to have large jets in here, or chartered aircraft, like JetBlue is not going to be coming into Chatham with larger jets.
Highly doubt that.
Okay. Thank you.
All right. Let's see, I've got a couple of hands up, but I think Commissioner Galen, you've been up for a while, so please.
A quick comment, even if the design aircraft changed to a Type 2, the RPZ would never be larger than 13 acres under the 1 mile visibility. So the whole 49 acre, that's the biggest myth of all when it comes to the RPZ. That's not in the cards at all, regardless of design aircraft in this case.
That is correct. And there's no document, master plan, environmental assessment, or any correspondence from Gale to the commission, from the commission to Gale, to FAA seeking anything lower than 1 mile. That all of that stuff, those safety elements are going to be left up to the experts at FAA flight procedures to determine the safest approach that can be implemented in Chatham.
Okay, let's go to one of our guests. I think this is Mr. Quinn. Go ahead.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman, and thanks a lot, Matt, for that great presentation. I appreciate the circular that you made mention of. The design aircraft, if I'm not mistaken, and Matt, you could maybe correct me on this, it's also a double-edged sword. I think part of the reason for that is for like community overreach. If you made the design aircraft, which let's just go out on a limb and say you wanted a 747 or Air Force One to come in, now you could have all kinds of money being spent, billions of dollars on aircraft lighting systems, approaches. You'd be clearing land from here to Hyannis to get a 747 in here. And I think the key that you mentioned and brought up aptly was the design aircraft was the one that was most critical, most predominant. Pilatuses aren't landing here 3 times a day, 4 times a day. They may in the summertime, but that's not the design aircraft. And I think it's also, if I'm not mistaken, it saves the government some money by communities that have tons of land, tons of resources from over designing an airport that's 3,000 feet long to get all kinds of these bells and whistles to an airport that no one will ever use. Would that be considered the other side of the coin? when you talk about design aircraft, someone picked the Beech 58 as the design aircraft for Chatham, and it's probably a good pick. And that's how you sort out what you're going to spend money on, what the town spends money on, as well as what the airport commission spends the majority of their time trying to make safer. Is that, am I even close? So at 501, if we have the 501st Pilatus come in, that doesn't mean everything gets torn up and shredded and thrown in the trash and we got to start over again. It just means we may have to start looking at something else. But I don't think the design aircraft makes a huge difference, other than to guide the airport commission and folks like you to design what is properly necessary for the safety of the airport. Am I close here?
Yes, that's a very astute observation, Dana, because that's part of the reason why the FAA requires that they vet and they review and ultimately approve the forecast section. So the master plan itself is accepted by the FAA, but the forecast chapter is actually approved by the FAA, and it's for that exact reason. They want to make sure that the airport's not going in there and actually overstating the type of aircraft that are utilizing the airport, thereby spending, additional federal dollars on infrastructure needs for a design aircraft that doesn't actually exist at the airport. So you're 100% spot on with that, and I'll just leave it at that.
Thank you, Dana. Let's see, Ms. Gibbs, you're up.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. To get back to Mr. Howard, maybe I can ask him for informational purposes. He had said we can't trust FlightAware in terms of the counts. It's inaccurate. But he said that he monitors it. So I guess my question is, how does one monitor that if at midnight a plane comes in and is sitting there for 2 hours and then takes off? How is that counted, and how do they know if they haven't filed a flight plan and for whatever reason they decide to come in late at night and then take off? How do we know what kind of aircraft it is, and how could that be counted? I don't understand what the guard system is. Maybe he can explain it. But I have heard reports from a lot of people who live there that planes do come in late at night and they're not there in the morning. So how are they counted or not?
Mr. Howard, go ahead.
Yes, to answer the question in short, they are counted. Let me rephrase my statement about FlightAware. FlightAware is not 100% reliable, nor are any of our counting needs, so they need to be used together. FlightAware oftentimes has errors of the number of takeoffs and landings in a given day due to reporting problems and antenna reception issues. They take their data from a variety of sources, FAA flight plans, as well as ADS-B or radar transponder hits that some airplanes are and are not equipped with. So that's where the error gets introduced. So in your specific scenario where aircraft comes in late at night, if the airport is typically unmanned at that time, we do check FlightAware and some other commercial sources to see if there was indeed traffic that night. If that's the case, we contact them, verify that's them, we collect their landing fee, and mark it in our records as to when they came in and what type.
But if they come in without a flight plan, and you may or may not be able to verify it, a Pilatus could be landing and you wouldn't know it's a Pilatus. I'm just trying to figure out, there's been a discrepancy in your numbers versus other people's numbers on the number of takeoffs and landings of Pilatus. And I guess what I'm trying to ask is, how do you identify the particular type of plane that is landing if they haven't filed a flight plan and they may or may not have been picked up by FlightAware because of it?
It's not 100% accurate. We do the best we can. Typically, the larger airplanes like the PC-12, they are equipped with the more modern radar transponder information. So usually the type aircraft from them can be trusted. So if it says PC-12 on FlightAware, it's generally a PC-12. Occasionally they do get it wrong and things are mixed up. But the smaller aircraft, certainly they get it wrong a lot more, but nothing's 100% infallible. And a lot has to do with the coverage of their receivers. So there's a variety of errors that can get scaled into there.
Okay, and there was just one more thing I'd like to say, because I don't know if I can speak at the end. I understand that you want to wait for the NTSB final report on the plane crash. However, the NTSB had said that won't be for 1 to 2 years. The information I gave you was from the preliminary report of the NTSB. They are the ones that said there was no instrument flight rating and the times of takeoff and landing. And so I think that it behooves the airport to take that situation, not that particular flight, but a what if situation, because we do know he didn't have an instrument flight rating. The NTSB said that. And he was flying at night and he did get disoriented, apparently. That's what they believe. So I would urge you not to say we're going to wait 2 years, because something could happen in the interim. I think it's the responsible thing to do. So I just wanted to get that out there. I didn't just make it up. The NTSB issued a report. Thank you.
Ms. Commissioner Galen?
There is nothing we can determine about that incident. We just don't know. He might have had a medical issue. You know, to say he was disoriented, that's good supposition, but no one knows for sure what happened. What can we do? Virtually nothing in a case like this. It was a clear night. Pilot was flying his own plane. Unfortunately, that's the reality of the situation. Regardless of equipment we have here, there's no way to change what a pilot may or may not do. Everything points to the fact that there was a pilot issue that caused that crash, not an equipment issue. To say that even if we had different systems in place, that CQX might have made a difference would be spurious. It'd be completely irrelevant and not germane to the situation. He wasn't anywhere near the airport.
Except he was trying to get to it. I don't want to belabor this, but the problem is you can have all
Point of order.
You can have any kinds of things, but it's up to the pilot. And that's where accidents happen. And what you want to do is mitigate those situations as much as possible. I think your plan may not do that. I think it might make it more difficult.
More difficult? That's no, exact opposite. What we've been talking about is improving the safety of the airport. The LPV approach is a huge step forward. The system we have right now is obsolete to the point where the state of Massachusetts, which has maintained it, has said they're done, since we're the only airport in the entire state still using the beacon. They've walked away from it. We got to remember, this is the beacon that Amelia Earhart was looking for when she was lost in her voyage. No, to say we're not doing enough, well, maybe we could do more, but we're trying to make steps to go forward and make it safer and make all the approaches safer. That's our point.
And we will just inject here, we will be maintaining the NDB until we get new approaches. Mr. Quinn again.
Mr. Chairman, can I make a quick comment on this?
I'll get to you.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm really sorry to belabor this, Mr. Chairman, but when I hear things that are mentioned that aren't true, they need to be pointed out and corrected right away. I think Ms. Lofgren mentioned that the gentleman that lost his life around Chatham, just off Nauset Beach, didn't have an instrument rating and he was flying at night. I think we need to realize that you don't need an instrument rating to fly at night. When student pilots are learned, they've got to have 3 hours of night training. That's not so they can somehow become an instrument rated pilot, but you have to have a certain amount of night time. And I don't want to get down in the weeds on this, but because that gentleman who lost his life did not have an instrument rating, has nothing to do with the fact that he was flying at night. Any pilot who has a license, a pilot's license, can fly at night. And I just need to correct that, that's all. Thanks a lot, and I'm sorry to bring it up, but I can't keep letting these things go by without being corrected.
Commissioner Cortese?
Yeah, I just wanted to, as an active instrument pilot, and going back to the days when I was not an instrument pilot, but I was working on my instrument rating. There are a lot of pilots that are working on an instrument rating and may not have an instrument rating, but which precludes them from flying in obscured weather, but does not preclude them from using the services of an instrument rating or the services of instrument approaches. Especially at night. One of the reasons, and this is adding to Mr. Galen's comments, are on the approaches. Most aircraft have the equipment to utilize those approaches. And one of the ones we're looking at is going into runway 6. Runway 6 will prevents pilots from having to go way out over the water. On the runway 24 approach, and just because you're shooting an approach or following an approach to runway 6 does not mean you have to land there, because you can put yourself perfectly in a downwind leg for runway 24 with that approach to runway 6. Simply, we do not know enough about this incident, and as a pilot, I look at these types of accidents all the times in order to improve our safety at our airport and to prove myself as a pilot. And a lot of times when I go to a separate, new airports or other airports, even airports that I know, I will use the instrument approach to follow the instrument approach to provide the guidance in. It's similar to having a lit road with a double solid and a white line on the right versus a dark country road that might be dirt that you have to navigate in a car. Thank you so much.
Thank you. I see 2 hands, and then we're cutting off this discussion, and then we'll take a vote on the engineer's report unless Mr. Karen has more to say at that point. Ms. Lofgren?
Hi there, Huntley. Thank you, Mr. Quinn. I will give credit to Ms. Gibbs for asking the question about the accident off of Nauset. But I would like to also take the opportunity, like Mr. Quinn, to dispel a misconception. There is not a single person I know of that expects JetBlue or Cape Air or full service airlines to be here in Chatham. That is not the issue. The Pilatus is not as big as some of those planes, but if you are standing underneath the Pilatus when it comes in, it is pretty large. And there is a concern, as we see, I live on the hill. I am not under the direct approach of it. I'm to the side. I can see it coming, I swear, for miles. And in the nighttime, when they come in with the lights, you can see them a lot farther out. But it is just concerning when one of those planes comes in inclement weather, so that as it passes by, you can hear it, but you can't see it. And there is no missing this plane when it's coming in the daylight. So there is concern over the uncertainty of this plane. And if I do recall correctly, there was a person on the hill that went down after this plane came in and asked the pilot about it. And I will check this. Asked the pilot, did he know how close he was to the houses on the hill? And the response from the pilot was, he didn't know there were houses on the hill. So there's that level of uncertainty when that plane comes in is what is worrisome, not whether or not JetBlue or any other larger aircraft is going to come in. Thank you.
Just a sidebar on that. I was asked at the Monomoy Community Services event last summer if JetBlue was coming into Chatham. So,
oh, Huntley, I'm sure there's
regardless, there are misconceptions out there that we need to straighten out.
I'm sure there were a few people, Huntley, and I do recognize that, but the majority of the people are aware that kind of service will not be coming into Chatham, nor those size planes. So thanks. And thanks for the presentation.
I certainly hope so. I said that I had one more, and I'm going to have to cut people off because we have to move on. I have one more, and that's Mr. Haas. His hand was up. Mr. Quinn, I'm sorry. I'm going to have to put you off. I'm sorry.
Thank you, Chairman Harrison. I just wanted to, add, to the comments made by Ms. Gibbs that, in fact, and the point has sort of been made, in fact, the airport is doing something to reduce the possibility that a crash could occur near the airport. Can it eliminate that possibility? No. Can we eliminate the possibility that a car traveling on Route 28 will run into someone and kill that person, or perhaps a child or whatever? No, we can't, because ultimately there is a high degree of personal responsibility that is associated with any of these kinds of activities. And the same thing is true in aviation. There are rules and regulations, but as we know in life, rules and regulations are made to be broken. Some people will break them, and we cannot prevent everyone, from following those rules. And this is not to speculate on whether the pilot was actually violating any rule or regulation. It doesn't seem that he was, but we just don't know. But the point is really that we cannot eliminate the risks that are associated with aviation with any set of rules or regulations. All we can do is to improve and improve. And it's so, it is upsetting, to hear that people are speculating about, what are we doing to prevent, this possible tragic occurrence of an aircraft actually crashing near the airport, when these same folks, many of them, are arguing strongly against the improvements that I should say, the Airport Commission in particular is trying to achieve. So really, we're on the same side. And what's shocking is why people are picking on, the possibility of a tragedy, which can occur anywhere, anytime, and just trying to focus that into trying to block any progress. In fact, most of the folks, that are opposing the airport want, in many cases, nothing to be done. They don't want to recognize the fact that the trees that surround the airport have grown a tremendous amount in the last 20 years. So this is, that's what, is concerning. And I think that an honest dialogue and an honest understanding, and I think the commission has been working hard to achieve that, even though my personal opinion is a lot more could be communicated to explain to the public exactly why and how. In the Charter Review Committee meeting yesterday, Mr. Wilson basically said that he had a question: how could a 400-foot ceiling approach be more safe than a 600 ceiling approach? And the answer is, just because 400 is lower than 600 does not mean it's less safe. As a matter of fact, if you go through the details and you're willing and you have an open mind to understanding it, it's not that hard to understand how, there are many safety publications that have publicized the dramatic reduction in crashes near an airport due to the straight-in approaches that Chatham is trying to achieve. So I will leave it at that and hope that really there's a recognition that for those people who espouse safety, we are on the same side. That is to say, the pilots and the folks on the ground are on the same side. We all want to avert a tragic accident. So I'll leave it at that, and I thank you, Chairman Harrison.
You're welcome. And I just want to, before we go back to Mr. Karen to close out the engineer's report, I just want to make a brief comment that for those of you who have fear of the Pilatus, I just want you to know that those pilots have many hours of left seat time and right seat time in those aircraft. They're not just, you know, the general aviation pilot that jumps into the left seat of a Pilatus and starts flying it. They are probably some of the safest and most current, due to rules and regulations that the government has for them, to operate those aircraft. The aircraft itself has a stellar safety record. And it goes right along to with the automation that's built into them, with their guidance systems. I think those, I'm not totally sure, but I think those aircraft have systems in them that at a larger airport could land themselves, depending on the type of landing system they have at the airport. So I think we're not dealing with a half-baked airplane. We're not dealing with half-baked pilots. We're dealing with excellent professional pilots who fly that aircraft. That's my comment on that. Mr. Karen, do you have anything else for the engineer's report?
I do not. If there's any further questions from me, happy to answer them, but otherwise, my report is complete.
Well, we're going to go on. I'm going to take a vote to accept the engineer's report. I do want to thank you for your comments tonight on the RPZ and the design aircraft. I hope that people were listening and understood what you said. I'm sure there are going to be people out there who may not agree with it, but you know, that said, we're giving the the straight facts based on our airport and what the FAA has approved. So I thank you for all of that, and I hope it does clarify things for people, and that some of the misinformation that's floating around out there with 49-acre RPZs is now a past item.
Okay, you're welcome.
I need a motion, gentlemen.
So moved.
Okay.
Second.
All right, so Mr. Galen, Mr. Cortese, and a vote to approve the engineer's report. Commissioner Burke.
Yes.
Commissioner Cortese.
Yes.
Thank you. Commissioner Donovan.
Yes.
Commissioner Galen.
Yes.
Commissioner Owens.
Yes.
And Commissioner Harrison. Yes, thank you, gentlemen, very much. All right, the next item on the agenda is item D, the Charter Review Committee meeting report. I think most of the people who are here tonight were at that meeting yesterday. And I just want to say that what I have put in the package is what I brought to the meeting yesterday. And it was a listing of the responsibilities of the Airport Commission so that the Charter Review Committee would know what our job is and what the select board would be saddled with if they were to take on that job. The report that I wrote, I said at the very end, is definitely comprehensive, but I said it is definitely not exhaustive, because there are other things that the Airport Commission does. They're small, they're little things on a day-to-day basis, but what I put out there in that report is what the Airport Commission does as mandated by Chapter 90 in Massachusetts General Law, and also by FAA regulations and by town regulations. It's all in there. I don't think it's long. It's 3 pages. Anyone's, can read it and see what I put out. And I don't want to take, I don't want to put it up on the screen because people can read it. But I will entertain questions from the other commissioners if you have any. Okay, thank you. This is not an action item, so you don't need a vote. Item E, the Fisherman storage area relocation. Mr. Whalen, you have the floor.
Thank you. Terry Whalen, Town of Chatham. And the item in your package was a staff report. Really, this is intended for informational purposes. As the commission's well aware, they've taken a vote to close the storage area. The effort in the staff report is what staff has been charged to look at to find a solution for this town problem off of the airport site. So just really for an informational update on what's happening, where we're looking. And this was the latest presentation that went before the Board of Selectmen. And in response to one of the earlier questions from the public, actually the siting for 8 was pared down, actually reducing, to assuming just Chatham permit holders, as a first cut. But ultimately, any management decision would be that of the Board of Selectmen, as they determine the management parameters, configurations, who they let in, so on and so forth. But it was pared down already to try to find, a spot that would only accommodate Chatham permit holders. But and to that question on the demand, so there's still some work going on by the Harbor Master's Department to determine actually how many people would be even interested in such a facility in Chatham. And again, we need to generate more information on what it might cost to create such a facility, manage it, operate it, so on and so forth, and then also the rules and regulations. So that's kind of an overall thumbnail of what's going on. That's continuing to be refined. This work will also require some additional coordination with FAA as well. They might have some potential mitigation requirements as well as part of this, even though it's totally off the airport property. It still might require some consultation with FAA as well. So that's going to be happening shortly as well. So, I'll answer any questions, but again, it's really for your information. I know this is not the commission's responsibility to find a location, but this is just for your information that the town is following up, trying to find a solution, hopefully prior to the most recent deadline that you voted for, 6/30/22 for closure.
Okay. We have received, thank you, Terry. I received an email from the town on the 7th, I guess that was yesterday, relating to the possibility of continuing the storage area in the existing location with better controls and management. There was an amended motion by Selectman Nicastro to instruct staff to, and I'll read this, to instruct staff to proceed with the evaluation and cost proposal of the former soil storage area for the Fisherman storage area, and identify a funding source for required site preparation conditioned, this is the important part, conditioned on the determination that the current storage area at the Chatham Municipal Airport is not permissible. The roll call vote for the select board was 4 yeses. I think there was only 4 of them there that night. And I was asked to include this request as an agenda item for discussion. So I would like to open this up for discussion from the commissioners. And we will be taking a vote on whether we want to, sorry about that, on whether we want to continue and change our mind on what we have proposed and continue with the storage area with better controls and management, which have not been defined, or whether we want to stick with our original vote. So I'm opening it up for, well, now let's have a discussion first, then I'll open it up for a vote. So I see Commissioner Galen's hand. You're going to have to unmute though, because we do want to hear you.
Maybe not.
Yeah.
I mean, the decision really wasn't ours in the first place. The FAA pretty much told us it's got to go. And as far as changing our mind, we can't turn around and say to the FAA, no, we're going to maintain it. I mean, this idea that they could somehow improve it, manage it better, maybe. I would say that would be up to the FAA, not us. I know we asked some questions when the original wildlife management report was prepared. Could it be done differently? And the indication was probably not. It's difficult to control wildlife, to say the least.
Right.
But I think, unless the FAA said, sure, they can stay and they've got to do X, Y, and Z, I don't think there's much way, I don't think we have much leeway. Again, it wasn't our decision in the first place. We didn't look to throw the fishermen out. Yes, we wanted them to clean up the mess. That's true. But in terms of, terminating their ability to use the spot, no. That was something that was pretty much told to us by the FAA because the Wildlife Management Hazard Report said it had to go.
Okay. I see Mr. Donovan's hand up.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I mean, I think the time for, reviewing any sort of protocols to make it stay where it is, is over. I mean, we've been trying to clean this up even before the FAA was involved 5 or 6 years ago. So, I mean, I think the time's passed for any mitigation measures for this area. It's time to move on.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Owens?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just find it hard to believe that we're even being asked this. Nobody seems to be listening. It's a directive from the FAA that we were told that we need to close it. We've been very, very patient. We've moved deadlines a couple of times now, and still, other than tonight's presentation by Mr. Whalen, nothing's been done. And this has been going, it's been known that we've had to close it, unfortunately, for 2 or 3 years. And it's unfortunate. And I know it's going to be some work to prep some area for them to move, but hopefully that can be done in a timely manner.
Right. And, and I know that there are not, I don't think all of the fishermen, I think a lot of them have moved out. Whether they've taken a lot of their things with them or not is another question, but I think a lot have moved out and decided to find another home for their equipment. When it comes right down to the actual numbers, that's up to the harbor master, and whether he can entertain people from other towns or not, that's up to him. And I don't think it should have happened in the first place that fishermen from other towns were allowed to utilize Chatham property, but that was certainly out of our hands a long time ago. And I think it was a matter of, no good deed goes unpunished, and I think that's what we're looking at here. Things should have happened a long time ago that didn't, and now, unfortunately, we have to be the bad guys. But it's not us. We're following the directives from the FAA and our grant assurances and our land compliance recommendations. So, I don't see us changing. I think what I'd like to do, unless there are other commissioners who would like to weigh in at this point, I see Mr. Howard has his hand up. But are there any other commissioners first? Okay, Mr. Howard.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. just to zoom out to the 30,000 foot view on this, forget the director from the FAA, but look at the reason why they're doing this. It's a liability and a safety issue. So if this was recommended and no action was taken, and then something happens, incident, accident, loss of life, and this is not done, what is the town's liability issue on this? I mean, the FAA is recommending this for a reason. It's to decrease the chance of bird strikes for aircraft operating in the vicinity of the Chatham Airport. And that's for the people in the airplane and on the ground. We talked a lot tonight about safety, and this is safety. That's all. Thank you.
Yep, thank you. I think it's time, if there are no other commissioners who would like to speak, I'd like to entertain a motion. If someone would make a motion, please. Word the motion, not just say so. Can anyone put this into words? I mean, I can put it into words, but I didn't want to have to. All right. Okay. I will put it into words that we will send back to the select board that our recommendation is to stay the course with the original closure date of June 30th, 2022. And that the area will be closed at that point, if not sooner, and blocked off from further use, unless the Airport Commission comes up with another option. We've had a motion, it's been seconded. Is there any further discussion?
I'd like to just say I'd love to come up with an alternative for this, but I agree with the safety issues. As you know, bird strikes, as Mr. Howard had brought up. I'd love there to be an alternate, but unless we can come up with something, I'm with the plan.
Yep. Unfortunately, the burden's on the town here to find something. Commissioner Owens?
Yes. I was we're voting on responding to the select board that we can't make allowances and continue to use the Fisherman storage area, correct?
That is correct.
Okay.
We're staying the course with the recommendation we provided them and the Fisherman earlier. Okay.
I second.
Okay. Thank you very much, gentlemen. Roll call. Commissioner Burke.
Yes.
Commissioner Cortese.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Donovan.
Yes.
Commissioner Galen.
As much as I don't like the vote, I will vote yes because of the safety issue. And I don't believe there is a mitigation that can be done.
Okay. Commissioner Owens.
Yes.
And Commissioner Harrison, yes. Gentlemen, thank you very much. The next item on the agenda is, and we will need a vote on this as well, is the engagement of legal counsel for the Airport Commission going forward. I'll give you a little background on that. Given the temperature of the town right now, or at least a certain portion of the town, with regard to the Charter Review Committee goings on, the Planning Board issues, the obstruction clearance issues, I felt it was important that we seek external legal counsel for the Airport Commission. This, I think, will prevent a conflict of interest for town council, should that happen. We're working with a very qualified firm in Anderson Krieger. I have had contact with them, discussing with them if they would like to work with us. They have extensive aviation experience. They are experts in it. And I will say this, that our town council thought it was a good idea and agrees with the going forward with having our own legal counsel. Whether we use them for all the items I mentioned before, I don't know. We may not use them at all. But at the same time, I want to make sure that we have coverage, legal coverage, given the situation that the Airport Commission is going through now and has gone through over the last couple of years. So I'd like a little discussion before we bring it to a vote. So commissioners, let's see what you have to say. Commissioner Galen, you're on.
It's a good idea for a lot of reasons, most of which you've stated. But in addition, if we have a legal question, an aviation-related legal question, it's much more efficient to go to an organization like Anderson Krieger, who specializes in that work, than to put Pat Costello on notice and force him to do extra work, so to speak. It increases the amount of time he'd have to spend on it versus someone that's more involved in that field. That's a big part of it. And the funds is we will pay for this directly out of airport revenue, as opposed to out of town revenue or out of the town legal payment fund. So it's better application of monies. This is directly airport revenue being used for an airport purpose rather than having to go to the town well and use town council. I think it's better for him. It keeps him out of a potential conflict of interest. And it also enables us to have more direct, specific aviation expertise. That's not to diminish what Pat's done in terms of that, but it's not his area of expertise. It's this agency's area of expertise.
Right. And they do come highly recommended. So that's, and I think it's a good, I will re-emphasize what you said about the use of airport money to pay for this. It's all out of the revolving fund, and we will be able to pay for it. Commissioner Cortese.
Yes, I believe it's a good idea to have council in general, given the climate of the commission at this time, and specifically if needed to help on this case. And I think Mr. Galen made a great comment about they specialize, and we can refer to them with questions. Don't like the fact that we need to use them or think about this, but this is the situation we're in, so it makes the most sense.
Yeah, and you know, right now it's very difficult for me to get in touch with town council. So, you know, I can certainly send him an email, but there are several steps involved if we want to use Mr. Costello. This way I can pick up the phone, email Mr. Mackey, and get an answer back almost immediately. So I think, from my point of view, I think it's a wise decision to make. And if we have other comments, I'd like to hear them from other commissioners if you have them. Mr. Owens.
I think it's a great idea, and I think it's long overdue. I can remember sitting in on the commission meetings when they were having them at the airport. I don't know, 10, 12 years ago, whatever. And, you know, I've seen the commission, the airport manager taking a beating over a lot of issues, and I think we could have used counsel back then. And I know that the town council has helped us, and he's very busy with other town departments. And I think it's maybe time we could push back a little bit, because, you know, there's just all the misinformation, the things that are costing the town a massive amount of money, the airport manager a massive amount of money, the airport commission a lot of money, and you know, it's been ridiculous years ago, and you know, it's got to stop. So I think we have, you know, as you said, if you can, if you have pretty good access to get answers to questions or help with something, I think it's you know, a great idea, and you know, just really long overdue.
Thank you. All right, Mr. Cortese again.
Yeah, I also feel as though if there's any question from a, as the town council has gone, kind of played a line on both sides saying this could be, this couldn't be, having a more definitive answer, especially from an aviation side, could certainly help us and help the airport and the town in general.
Commissioner Donovan?
Yeah, I think it'll be you know, a great resource for us and help us get stuff done more efficiently. So definitely in support of it.
Okay, thank you very much. I see one comment from the public. I'll take one comment from the public. Ms. Freeman?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just would like to know if our town elected officials have approved this. Have they discussed it? If they have, I've missed it, but if you would tell me, please.
Our vote tonight will go to the select board. And the town, reporting our vote to the town manager. If they decide that they don't like it, then we'll hear back.
So this has not been discussed by our elected officials prior to your...
I've discussed it with our chairman, with the chairman, the select board chairman, Mr. Kokolas.
And he did not believe that this should go to the entire board for discussion prior to your vote?
No.
This seems to me, this is just a resource for us rather than like having a vendor to do the crack sealing and the pavement.
Yeah.
I mean,
Thank you.
Mrs. Freeman, if the town board doesn't want us to do this, they'll tell us. But we have to move forward. And
So,
you know, if you read Chapter 90 of the Mass General Law, we have the right to do this as an airport commission.
but as a courtesy to our elected officials, if they do not agree with this, will then you rescind your vote?
I have no idea how that'll happen. I can't answer that. I'm going to take it a step at a time.
Okay, well, thank you very much.
You're welcome. All right, gentlemen, roll call. The motion is to engage Anderson Krieger as legal counsel for the Airport Commission and to pay for it out of the airport revolving fund.
So moved.
Okay, that was Mr. Cortese. You got a second?
Yes.
That was Mr. Burke.
Yep.
Thank you. All right. Those who approve of this engaging Anderson Krieger, say aye. Commissioner Burke.
Aye.
Commissioner Cortese.
Aye.
Commissioner Donovan.
Aye.
Commissioner Galen.
Aye.
Commissioner Owens.
Aye.
Commissioner Harrison. Aye. Thank you, gentlemen. Moving on. Next step is public relations update. This will be Commissioner Galen. You're muted. I'm sure your words are eloquent, but we can't hear them.
No, they weren't. Anyway, this is just a continuation of what we started more than a year ago in terms of looking for a public relations firm to help us communicate with the public at large, what's going on with the commission, what's happening at the airport, the various programs in which we're involved, as well as all these issues that have come before us or come before the public. To date, I've looked at 5 different firms. We started with a list of state-approved firms that Terry Whalen provided for me. And from that, I worked through the list trying to find firms that have some background in working with municipalities, public government, et cetera. And so far, I've talked to 5 firms. We've narrowed it down to 5 different firms. We'd actually narrowed it down to 3, then to 1. That firm, we decided because of a potential conflict of interest issue, we dropped it, put this on a shelf for several months, and just came back to it. We've since talked to 2 more firms, and next month there'll be a presentation on the finalists and a recommendation of a firm to hire to help us. So far, I've been very impressed with the finalists that we've talked to.
Okay. Other commissioners, this is something that we don't need to vote on it because we've already voted back in January to pursue the retention of a public relations firm. So we don't have to revote that. I just will take a consensus from you all. The one thing I heard yesterday at the Charter Review Committee was that the Airport Commission needs to communicate better. And I agree. I'm not about to argue that. We're one of the boards in town, not the only board, but one of the boards in town that does not, it has only one staff person who splits his time between the Airport Commission and numerous other obligations that he has. And that's it. So I should say we also have some help from the accounting office, but not on a regular basis, just on an as-needed basis. So I think having a public relations firm to help get the correct word out in terms of what we're doing, when things will happen, I think is critical to our moving forward in a positive way with the town and letting them all know what exactly is going on. The back and forth in the newspaper, it's to me, it's getting tedious. Hopefully we can get some good positive word out there that will hopefully put some of that to rest when people know the correct answers to all the questions like we had tonight on the RPZ and the design aircraft. That's the kind of thing we need to get out to the public better. I've mentioned earlier in the meeting about forums with subject matter experts. I think that's important. And I think a public relations firm can help us with that and getting the word out as to what those meetings will be about. And basically also, what is the airport all about? There was a publication that went out, published by Kinlan Grover, real estate office, saying, what's going on at the airport? I have no idea who wrote that. I have no idea when it was printed, but it was something that I guess the real estate people felt needed to get to their potential buyers or renters. And it was a positive piece generally. I did notice some things in there that were not totally correct, but I think that's what we need to do. We need to get the word out and get it out there as soon as we can. So I really would like to emphasize that we move forward with this from the commissioners. So I'd like just a consensus. Oh, we got one more thing before I go to the roll call.
Mm-hmm.
This is just a consensus.
Before, just one thing, like the legal situation, this will be funded by airport money.
Oh, yes.
Just want to make that clear as well.
Yep. It'll be funded by airport money. That's absolutely correct.
And it is also expressly allowed by the FAA.
Oh, right.
To use airport funds for the promotion of the airport. They've written that out in a number of different locations.
Thank you. So just to get a consensus, let me put it this way. Do any of the commissioners object? If so, say so. All right. Thank you. All right, the last item on the agenda involves the airport revolving fund. What this is all about, if the commissioners, I hope you looked at the notes, the package on this. You know that the revolving funds have to go in front of town meeting for any change in those, except I think for I think there can be an authorization for an increase that's approved during the fiscal year by the select board and the finance committee. And what I'd like to do, given that we might find some expenditures with the legal counsel and with the public relations and other possible expenses that may come up, that the $75,000 cap that we have right now on the airport revolving fund for the fiscal year that we're currently in may not be enough. So what I would like to do is have a motion from the group that we request to the finance committee and the select board an increase of $25,000 to the cap, so that the cap for this fiscal year increases to $100,000, just to cover our bases. We may not use it, but at least it gives us some room in there to work with. So any conversation from the commissioners on this? Mr. Owens.
Can we vote to raise that during the fiscal year?
Yes.
Yes.
The next fiscal year if we run low?
Let me read something. This is in the Chatham General Bylaws. It's an excerpt, Chatham Chapter 37 on funds. It says in items under 37-2, expenditure limitations, item C. The total amount spent during a fiscal year shall not exceed the amount authorized by town meeting on or before July 1st of that fiscal year, or an increased amount of that authorization that is later approved during the fiscal year by the select board and the finance committee. So given that,
thank you.
Given that, I think, I'd like to move ahead with this, and then we'll submit it. If they don't want us to do it, if they don't want to do it, then they don't want to do it. And we'll find out. But I just want to make sure that we don't get to a situation where we have the public coming up and saying, you overspent your cap, which we've already heard. So I don't want that to happen. And I don't know going forward right now what our expenses might be, but I just want to make sure we're covered. So the motion that I'd like you all to vote on is that we present to the select board and the finance committee our recommendation that the airport revolving fund cap be increased by $25,000 to $100,000 for the remainder of this fiscal year. Do I have a motion of a first on that motion?
So moved.
Okay. So I have first, and the second was Mr. Burke. Did I hear you back there?
You did.
Okay, thank you. All right. So I see two hands raised. I'll take some very quick because this is the last item. Mrs. Gibbs.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So if I understand this correctly, what you are doing is hiring a PR firm and you are hiring an attorney to fight against the people that have issues, and then you are going to go to town meeting and ask us to fund that. Is that what you're saying?
No. Oh. Because your words that we're using the PR firm and the legal firm to fight against, no, we're not fighting against anyone. We're protecting ourselves. Ms. Lofgren?
Oh, thank you, Huntley. I was just wondering, in your budget predictions, do you have $100,000 in your accounts to cover the increased cap year to year? And if not, where do the monies come from if you do not have $100K available to spend?
I'd request that they drop it back.
Okay, do you have 100,000 now? I know that you have more revenue from hangars and all. Do you budget for that?
I'll tell you what we have right now. Given everything in the revolving fund right now, if you look on in the handout, we have $604,247.
So you have enough to cover that going forward. Thank you, Huntley.
Welcome. That's by the way, that's account 4820. That's the bottom line of that account. And even if some of those numbers, if we owe money on that and those numbers go down, they're not going to go down that much. So I think we're good. So let me take a roll call. Mr. Owens, you have something for the good of the order here?
Yep, just quick. It would be nice that if we hire the PR firm and our own counsel, we might be able to get some things tidied up and in the long run, save money.
Possibly, yes. Yep. All right. Roll call vote on the motion to ask the select board and the finance committee to increase the revolving fund cap by $25,000 to $100,000 for the remainder of fiscal year 22. Commissioner Burke.
Yes.
Commissioner Cortese.
Yes.
Commissioner Donovan.
Yes.
Commissioner Galen. You got to unmute.
Yes.
Is that a yes? Thank you. Commissioner Owens?
Yes.
And Commissioner Harrison, yes. Thank you very much. I appreciate everyone's involvement tonight. I think it was a very good meeting. We can't please all the people all the time, but I think we've made some progress. I think people understand what's going on at the airport a little better tonight, especially with regard to the RPZ and the design aircraft. I think the other comments we had on the other topics, the fisherman storage area, I think those were good. I'm sorry that the situation in the fisherman storage area deteriorated to such a point that we have to close it. Not that, whether it had deteriorated or not, probably wouldn't have changed that at all from the FAA's point of view. It is a safety issue. We've got to close it, and I'm sorry that the burden is now on the town to find that spot. But we have to stand firm on that, and I think our vote tonight clarified that. We've talked about the legal counsel. We've talked about the public relations firm and funding. So I think we've had a good meeting, and we've got lots of work cut out for us going forward. There are big issues coming up, and we're going to try to address those issues as best we can. So, and I'd like to entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Thank you.
Second.
Okay, I think, let's see, Mike Galen, you seconded it. Was that Mr. Burke who?
Yes, yes.
Okay, thank you, Ted. All right, roll call to adjourn. Commissioner Burke,
Aye.
Commissioner Cortese,
Yes.
Commissioner Donovan.
Aye.
Yes.
One way or the other. Commissioner Galen,
Yes.
Commissioner Owens,
Yes.
and Commissioner Harrison, yes. Thank you all very much, and I guess we'll see you in January. And we will have, as Mr. Karen said, updated information for you there on the obstruction removal project. All righty. Have a good evening, everyone, and thank you for your participation. And thank you
Happy
all
holidays.
and the public for chiming in when necessary. Thank you, Mr. Howard. Thank you, Mr. Karen, and thank you, Channel 18. We appreciate your help.